What's up, ZBrushers? Welcome back to ZFever. It has been a long time since I have posted anything on this channel, and we are going to catch up. I have been doing a handful of live demonstrations, but I haven't had any kind of setup whatsoever. So sorry for the lack of interaction, aside from a few little blips in the chat. I don't know how many people will actually show up, but if you do show up, thanks for hanging out, and I will do my best to monitor the chat, see what's going on, and get to any questions that you have. My goal here today is to kind of talk about where I've been, what I've been up to the past several years. I'm going to show you some things I've been doing, and we'll eventually maybe get to some sculpture. I have been working on a commission that was asked of me by one of my co-workers, and so we might touch on that just a little bit. So yeah, so I want to give it like a minute or two, see if anybody shows up, and then we'll just kind of roll into this. No one shows up, that's okay, because I am just doing this for the fun of it. You know, it's interesting that let's see, when was my last post? It's been a minute. Well, I mean, up until like this past couple of weekends, I figured, you know, I'm gonna be working on a sculpture, ain't nothing much else going on, so I might as well just stream it, see if anyone shows up. The landscape has changed a little bit as far as you know, educational stuff on YouTube, which is pretty cool. The primary reason I ever started this channel was just because I was in school, or I had just I had been out of school for about a year or so, but there was information about ZBrush and digital sculpting, but it was kind of sparse, and it was during this period where, you know, ZBrush Pixelogic had its little channel, and they had their demonstrations that Joseph Drust and all them were doing, which were freaking awesome. But there was a lot of other stuff that was a little more in depth, and I don't know, I just felt like whenever I was coming up and learning how to sculpt, that there was a lot of information. It was out there, but it was mostly in the form of these demonstrations that either had no audio, or it was not very well put together. And so you can go back through some of the material on this channel if you'd like. Most of it is still relevant. I mean, it's removed by a few versions of ZBrush, but for the most part, it's still completely applicable to today. I have no intention in going back and revising any of that stuff, because there is just a wealth of knowledge out there these days. There are people like Mike Pavlovich, who was I watching earlier today, Polygon, and a whole bunch of other people. I mean, they make awesome material, and it's just, you know, go watch them. They got a ton of material, and you're going to learn a whole bunch. Okay. All right. Let me adjust the volume here just a little bit. Hopefully I don't get hit for a copyright strike. I don't know. I don't make money off of this, so I really don't care. But I do want to make sure I give credit to Galactic Drive. I love listening to this stuff and a lot of the other lo-fi stuff that's out there while I'm working. So, and if that audio gets annoying, just say so, and I will I'll drop it. Okay, so my name is Ricky. Ricky Kimball is my name, and I am a 3D artist. I've been working professionally for several years. I've had ups and downs in this arena. I am by far not the greatest 3D artist, and in fact I consider myself a bit of a hack of all trades. and I will admit it, just because that's just how it is for me. All right, I've worked independently, and currently I am working for a pretty cool. I'm doing a pretty cool gig for a company out here in San Marcos, Texas, where we make custom water features and things like that. And I get to do a lot of architectural visualization, and I also get to do product development and a lot of sculpture. And it requires a lot of really quick, down and dirty 3D modeling. And we might touch on some of that. I'm just going to run through just kind of a breakdown of what's been going on the past few years. So I was pretty active back in like 2015, 2016, and like I said earlier, if you were here, I made a whole bunch of videos about learning how to sculpt in ZBrush and all that stuff, and it was mostly as just a kind of a resource. I wanted to be a resource to you guys. And then once I started seeing like a whole bunch of other channels pop up, I was like, you know what, I've got other things I would rather be doing. Call it what you will. Where I've been for the past several years, I've been all over the place. I went from doing commission work to at one point I was working for an art foundry, and I worked for. Where's their website? I had it up here a moment ago. They're now called Pyrology, but back in the day they were called Deep in the Heart Art Foundry. It's run by a guy named Clint Howard and his family. Super cool place. It's one of the top 3 bronze art foundries in the United States. And the way I came across this, I had been working a whole lot on my portfolio, and I was working in a call center doing technical support for Rockstar Games, of all companies. We were doing tech support for Grand Theft Auto Online, and one of the guys sitting next to me was an artist. He was more of a graphic artist, and he told me, why don't you try, casting your stuff or making 3D prints and things like that. So I had never thought about that before. I mean, 3D printing was kind of fresh on the horizon by just a couple of years, at least for the consumer. And so I never thought about it. So I went down and I checked this place out, and I saw that they were using digital technology to create giant monumental sculptures. So I originally applied for there. I never heard back from them. It took me a couple of years, actually. That was back in 2015, maybe running into 2016. And then I had gotten laid off by that company. The contract ended for the tech support for Rockstar Games, and then I went on to another tech support job. It's just the way it was around the Austin area. A lot of people work either at Blizzard or they were working for this other company that will be unnamed because they're jerks. But anyway, I'd gone through a series of layoffs, and mind you, I'm also a combat veteran, and I don't know, some things stacked up. Life was busy, and then I ran into some issues with my mental health. I was diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder, and I had some difficulty managing that stuff, and I can talk about that at length at some other point. But it had a really big impact on my life, on my artwork and the direction that I wanted to go. But I never stopped making art. In fact, art's always been something that I've done just as kind of a release, because I have so much stuff going on inside of my mind, and sometimes I just need to get that out. And it's the same with anybody that does any kind of has any kind of creative endeavor. I know musicians, painters, sculptors, what have you. Everybody's got to have, you know, something that they do to kind of like work out their thoughts and their feelings, their emotions, and all that stuff like that. But me being a Marine Corps veteran, you know, we don't emote. Just kidding. Anyway, so in 2017, I had gotten laid off, and I figured I'd try applying to this place once more. And lucky enough, whenever I went up there, the owner actually happened to be there, and I got to sit down and talk with him a little bit, and they just kind of created a position for me, which was actually pretty cool. And I got to work with them for about 7 or 8 months, and then I had some situations pop up, and I just kind of wandered off from there, and went and worked on a farm for a little bit, and then went and started working for a company helping veterans. Worked at Amazon for a little bit, and then after another layoff, this opportunity to work for this company called Water Odyssey came up here in San Marcos, and I was lucky enough to be able to, I say lucky, blessed enough to be able to work for such a cool company. We make all kinds of cool stuff. We make water features for splash pads and things like that, but we do themed features. And they've been in business for a long time, but they sculpt these things out of foam, and traditionally, you know, it was always done like by hand. They still do a lot of stuff by hand, but it's not only by hand anymore. They've embraced a digital process, and I have been working with them for the past almost 2 years now, trying to revamp some of their product line, and I'm going to run through and show some of that to you guys here in a little bit. Some other things I've been involved with. Let's see. Some other things. Let's see. Where did I go? I was published in Sculptor Review for an article that I wrote on digital frontiers in sculpture, talking about, it's just a super like 100,000 foot view overview of the things that you can do digitally to make your artwork real, right? Whenever I went to school, I studied media art and animation, and so I have a very broad set of skills that incorporate, you know, audio production, video production, 3D modeling, 3D animation, and everything that goes with all that. But we never really talked about, because it wasn't really a thing at that time, we never really talked about how to make stuff in the real world, and that's a whole discipline in and of itself. But this article, it's available at Sage Publishing. But I don't expect y'all to go out there and subscribe to this just to read an article that I wrote. But I was published in here, and I talked about the different things you can do with 3D printing and 3D CNC milling, and how to use those things together with you know, traditional clay sculpting and the other technologies that go with it. You see, whenever I worked for the foundry, we had tons of artists that would come across, you know, they might be looking to incorporate a digital workflow, but they are not all artists use digital stuff. So we had this super cool guy. Let me see if I can find his work. His name is John Maisano. John Maisano. I'm messing his name up. Sorry, John. I doubt he'll ever see this, but he's a phenomenal sculptor. He does these super cool things, and it's kind of like this I love the work. It's kind of like this mixture of Art Deco and Rosetta and a whole bunch of other artists that I love. But he'll work on these little maquettes in clay, and something that he can work, just by hand, and then he'll bring it in and have it 3D scanned, and then they'll take that and they'll blow it up and carve it out of foam. Then he'll go back and cover that foam with uh, a layer of clay, and then refine it. Then they'll take all that, bring it back to the foundry, pull molds off of it, and then they'll cast waxes, and then they'll take those waxes, and then they'll go through and they'll actually cast them in bronze. It's a super, super cool process. I've been fortunate enough that experience working with the foundry. I got to learn, I got to learn 3D printing, 3D scanning, CNC milling, welding, mold making, metal chasing, wax chasing. It's there's a lot to it, and it's super freaking cool. Anyway, so that's one of the places I've been to. So nowadays, what I do is I make these things like this, right? So I make these little water features. Sorry, this is super grainy, but I couldn't find any high-res photos of this feature. But we make things like this, and they're basically just gigantic sculptures, but they're carved out of foam. They have like a super hard coating on them, kind of like a boat, and they're designed to last, take a beating, and super cool. And I'm going to show you some of those models as I go through. Something else I was involved with, they do this annual thing called Brushes with Cancer, where they pair up artists with cancer survivors to talk about their experiences. And this piece I was actually involved with. I was approached by a gentleman named Brian Kuntz and his wife. Brian, I don't know if he still works out there, but he was a photographer for Dell up in Austin, and they wanted to put together this kind of mixed media project, and with this idea of, as you see, with a man kind of walking out of the chapter, the chapter of his life where there was nothing but destruction from cancer, onto the next stage of his life. And so we had several different ideas about how to go about that. At first we thought about 3D printing the book, but then they decided, let's actually get a real book, and we'll work something out with that. And so that's an actual physical book, and she went through and she printed off the pages, some of the sayings of the does this blow up at all? Yeah. So this top page here, they actually typed all that stuff out, and then they just placed it on top of the book, and then they end up sculpting that out using some Mod Podge and things like that to get that to actually just be rather solid. And then I designed this character based around that. You can see a little bit of the peg that goes into the book, and they put it up for auction. I don't know how much they actually sold it for. I want to say they raised somewhere around $1,400, $2,000, something like that. But all these things go up for auction at the end of this term, and all the monies that are acquired through it go towards cancer research and assisting families that are dealing with that. So super cool to be involved with that, and I look forward to the next one I get to do. So let's see what else we got going on here. So I guess we'll talk about yeah, there's an organization here in Texas, Texas Society of Sculptors. We put on a show every single year in Georgetown. Georgetown, Texas is north of Austin by about 20, 30 minutes, depending on how fast you're able to drive. And they have a public library out there, and every summer we get together and we put on a sculpture show. And there are tons and tons of super cool artists, and it's just great to be able to interact with the public and to show off our work. I'm gonna pull up some of the works that I worked on there. I've got some photos, and let's see. Let me open up Lightroom. It's funny how things don't work. Well, I don't know what Lightroom's doing right now, but as soon as we're able to, it's trying to upgrade to something. I forget that. So let me exit that, and let me switch over to. I'm going to switch the screen over. All right, so these are a couple of sculptures that I worked on. Now these are just renders of the sculptures, but I actually ended up 3D printing these, and I ran them through a process using some tools. To give them a realistic effect. So this print was done in let's see, 1, 2, 3 pieces. And once I printed on just a regular FDM printer, and let me see if I can. See if I can find some photos of it. I'm not gonna spend some time doing that. I'll pull up the actual sculpt so I can have a look at it. But I ran it through a process using a series of techniques that I kind of learned. I learned by watching people on YouTube. You know, when you're printing with FDM, you always get these lines, and I hate sanding stuff, and I was trying to find the simplest way to be able to go through and fill things in, and I'll do a demonstration of that at some point. But basically, I got some 3D the resin that you use for the resin printers, and basically I just painted over the sculpture itself and just kind of let that resin just run its course, and it would go through and fill in the lines. And I spent all this money building a UV oven and trying to be like super technical about it, and I ended up not even using it half the time. All I did, what I figured out, is that so long as you're standing inside of the garage and there's no direct sunlight hitting any of the resin that you're putting on this thing, it won't cure. So what I would do is I was just like, once I got all the pieces of the sculpture together, I would paint the surface with the resin, and then as soon as I was satisfied with the flow of it and everything, I would just walk out into the sunlight and hold it out in the sun for 10-20 seconds, and it would cure instantly. And it made for a super cool process, and I'll get some stuff pulled together for the next time we do this, or I'll put them up on the ZFever group so people can see it if you want to check it out. So there's that one. This is the horse. So these were actually the entries that. So whenever you do a sculpture show, they're going to ask you to. What's going on here? They're going to ask you to do a submittal, right? And so I submitted some renders before I ever even printed any of this stuff out. And it was super cool to be able to get that done without having an actual physical object to show for it. So there's a dolphin. Okay, so let's see. Some other things I want to show y'all. I guess I'll pull up some of the models I've been working on. So, let me see here. Sorry if things are kind of like ridiculous. I'm not used to streaming like this whole streaming professional YouTube. I'm not a professional YouTuber. I never will be. But this whole YouTube thing kind of kicked off in the past few years, and I've been watching how people do it, but I have no plans to try and deal with any of that stuff. So let's see. Just getting set up here. Okay, so this is a lion that I did for one of the projects we did over at Water Odyssey. A client came to us and they wanted to take an existing Lions Club water fountain. Let me pull that up on the other screen here real quick before I switch this over. There it is. Okay, so what they did is they came to me and they wanted to produce this thing, but they wanted to make it into a kind of water slide for this aquatic center that they had. And originally their idea was like, we want it to look exactly like this thing. Well, that's what the salespeople said. I told them that was going to look a little bit ridiculous. So what we ended up doing is going through a concept stage, and I submitted a couple of ideas. I tried to show them, hey, here's how it might look with the way that you think that this should be, but let me show you some other options. And so what we ended up ultimately settling on was this. Sorry for the photo quality, but the best pictures I could find was on some little scaled down thing from Facebook. Looks like somebody was taking pictures with an old BlackBerry. But yeah, so that all started from this thing, and basically just going back and forth with the client just to kind of knock things out. The other thing is that it goes into a pool, so there's this edge here, and you have to take into consideration all that stuff whenever you're making a thing. It's different whenever you're making stuff for like film and or games. There's a lot of things that you can get away with there that you can't get away with here in the real world, and vice versa. Here, whenever I'm working on these things, I don't really have to care too much about topology. I don't really have to give much of a concern about UV maps and things like that. So I get away with a lot of things in this workflow that I do that I wouldn't be able to get away with if I was working on a more a game facing development, right? So that's important especially in my realm, because it's like it's easy to sit there and go, oh, I don't gotta worry about topology and things like that. But you don't want to let those skills go. And I want to talk about skills at a certain point. But let me turn some of this down here so that you can actually see. So this actually went from here, and then I ended up taking it into Rhino, and we had to convert all of these surfaces into, or had to convert the polygons into actual surfaces, and then we had to get that all ready to go over to another program called SpruteCam. SpruteCam is what we use at the office to be able to convert that digital information into G code for the CNC mill that is down in the foam shop. So all that information goes to this giant robot that ends up basically carving out the bulk of the material for the stuff that we use. So there's a lion. Let's see what else we got here. Yeah, this was one that was pretty cool. This was for I'll show you another model for the same job. We did this really cool installation out in Corpus Christi for the Texas State Aquarium, for which is called the HEB. Splash Park HEB is a giant. They're a grocery store in Texas. If you're from Texas, you know about HEB. And so they put together this thing. There's a series of animals. I did all the aquatic creatures, the sharks. There's a dolphin. I'll show you right here. And there's a turtle. I don't have it pulled up right now, but all these were used. I basically bought these models off of Turbo Squid, I believe it was, and we just posed them and then incorporated them into our sculpture. And then this was all meshed together and carved out on the machine. Let's see. And I guess I can pull up. It's not a very good picture, but I'll just try to show you what it looks like in the real life. So this is the Texas State Aquarium, and we tried to go with this kind of Aztec overgrown forest look. I don't know if they're going to actually do anything with the concrete. They may or may not. Let me see if I can find some better pictures. HEB Splash Park. Let's see. That's the picture we just saw. They went through a series of conceptual phases. Originally, they had a pirate ship on there. I don't know what happened with all that, but we did develop it, and these are all 3D models with the visualization that we did. It was a super cool project to work on, and that happens whenever you go through. We'll go through and make a series of sculptures, really quick sculptures for a sales pitch, and it's hit or miss whether or not somebody buys it, and that's okay. For me, it's super fun, and yeah. So let's see. Let me switch back over here. So that was a dolphin that we worked on. There's this ugly kraken. Not my favorite one to work on. It's an iteration on this guy. And we just make these little characters, just fun little things for kids. This is one for, this was actually produced, I'll see if I can pull up a picture of it, for a splash pad that went out in, I believe it's Anaconda, Montana. So my job as as a designer is I go through and somebody says, hey, I want to design, I want to see a custom design for such and such place, and we'll throw out a handful of ideas, and then I have to go out and I have to make it. And I don't have a lot of time to go through and figure that stuff, to waste whenever it comes to that. Usually I'll have at most a week to put together some ideas. Sometimes I don't have that time though. It just really depends. This is one that we've recently pitched. I think they're still trying to sort it out, but I had to put this guy together in a couple of days. And here's the rocket ship. So this is I make all of these. Whenever we make a feature for sale, we want to be able to try and resell it as much as possible. And so I try to make things modular. So even if somebody comes through and they say, hey, we want a custom rocket ship, if we want to reoffer that somewhere, then I need to be able to make it possible. And for us, for a 3D model, all you got to do is change out a texture basically. And this one was done for a place out in Ohio. Let me see if I can pull that up real quick. This place right here. And I go through and I basically just try to give them an idea, and because it's done digitally, the idea or the final product is not too far off from what was originally envisioned. And that's the cool thing with working the way that we do, is that nowadays you don't have to rely on art, or you don't have to deal with artist interpretation or reinterpretation of things. That was one of the things we dealt with down at the foundry whenever I worked there, where an artist would come through and they would have this sculpture that they spent who knows how long working on, and then they would finally go through and decide to have it cast in bronze. Well, when you do that, depending on the material that you're working with, if it's clay, the clay may not survive the mold making process, and so the original artwork sometimes gets destroyed in the process of trying to reproduce something made in bronze. And sometimes there are people who think that if they don't like a certain thing, that they have the option to go through and put their own spin on something, and that would happen, and it would cause a lot of problems, and it does happen. It even happens where I work now. I'll go through and I'll design a thing, and then somebody down the line decides, well, I don't think it needs this color paint, or I don't think it needs this, that, or the other. It can be really, really aggravating. So let's see. Are there any other sculptures I can show y'all? Oh yeah, this is a Noah's Ark model that we recently produced, and this is a good example of what I was trying to tell you about a second ago, about people going through and taking artistic license on things, and there are reasons why that happened. In this particular case, it was a production issue. I don't know. Do I have it pulled up? Let me see. Yeah, let me see if I can pull up the picture here real quick. Where is it? I'll share my screen here in a second. You'll see. So, whenever I talk about artistic interpretation, people taking liberties with things. What I'm talking about is the difference between what you see in here with a model that's produced, right? So just keep your eye on that, and then let's go have a look at what came out. Let's see if it'll show. There we go. This is what ended up coming out. Now, once they actually got it painted, it didn't look so terrible, but I tell you, whenever I saw this, I was not happy at all. I was pretty upset. A part of the process, some procedures and things like that can really change the way that something looks. But I'm not going to bash on it. You know, they did what they had to do. We'll say that. But you can see from this here, these are a lot of pieces. I just worked on this one last week. I had 2 days maybe that I worked on that. Not even that. And I'm constantly just churning out concepts. This is for something that we're working on with another company, to kind of put together some ideas for some play features for kids. There's a lot of cool stuff that you can do, and this is one of the pieces that we did for Corpus Christi. This was a shark slide, and this was all done originally in ZBrush. I did purchase a model that I plugged in there, and yeah. Now this is a case where the artistic license actually turned out okay. So the company that I work for, traditionally, there's that mine shaft too. Traditionally, they all work by hand, so they would build things off of grids like sculpture has been done forever. And the cool thing is, though, is that nowadays you don't have to run with that method. It's a little Toto dog that I did. This is a concept that I did for a water sprayer. This is a starfish that I made. Another little dog. This, and I'll talk about this here in a minute. This is something I was playing around with Adobe Express with the text-to-image AI thing that they have going on. My mother has a golden doodle, miniature golden doodle dog, and the dog likes cheeseburgers. So I just put a prompt in, and it went through and it made all these images. And, this is another prompt that I made. Some other models that I went through and made. These are all iterations off of the same dog. So yeah. So let's get back to ZBrush. Currently I'm working on, where is it? Did it get rid of my, there we go. So this is a commission that I'm working on right now. It originally started out being a version of a different model that I had worked on. Let me see if I can find it here real quick. This one that I did for the Texas Society of Sculptors show in Georgetown. Ended up, I tried to reuse it, and sometimes I try to do that, but it just didn't work out the way that I wanted it to. Open it up real quick. There we go. So this is the, this piece was called Thankful Heart. And it wound up being 3 different pieces. Yeah, you can see the key there. And basically I just printed it like that, and then it connected to the underside there. And then that connected to the top portion, which was broken into 2 pieces. And then I ended up putting some keys there. I may go back and change the way it's constructed. And I probably should have put a draft on there. That would have made things a little bit easier whenever I was going through and trying to put it together. But that it wasn't such a big deal that I couldn't just sand it a little bit and everything just kind of fit together. And that's what I like doing whenever it comes to sculpture. You know, whenever I went to school, I learned how to do animation and all that stuff, but it wasn't like something that I was super passionate about. I want to tell a story with something, and I think that that's the most important part of what it is that you're doing as an artist, is that one, do you truly enjoy what you're doing, and what exactly are you doing with it? Because to me, you know, I view it in a couple of different ways. I do this stuff because I'm able to. It's just what I'm able to do, right? And so there's that functional part, you know. Can I make money doing what I do? Not simply for the sake of making money, but, you know, how am I paying my bills? And that's a super important thing. But then the other side of it is beyond putting food on the table and everything like that. What else are you doing with the talents that you're given? And that's, you know, I think I would hope that's important to everybody, but I can't speak for everyone. But let's see. So yeah, so this ended up being a fun little project, and it all printed out just fine. I think it came out, I want to say each of these was about 6 to 8 hours worth of printing. This whole thing I printed it out at 2 foot, and it has a like a 5 or 9% infill, and it turned out just fine. It was kind of funny because most of the sculptures that were entered into the show weighed significantly more than mine, and I had these 3 pieces that together weighed less than 5 pounds, and I had painted them with a bronze paint from a company called Sculpt Nouveau. That it's a bronze infused paint, so they use bronze powder to inside of the paint, and so you can actually put a real patina on it with chemicals and things like that. Turned out pretty cool, and I liked the response that I got from a lot of people that were reviewing it, and for me, that was well worth it. Had some offers to buy the dolphin, but they never left me their information. So let's see, before I just start rambling and coherently. So some things that have changed over the past couple years. Artificial intelligence is a thing now. It's been in the process for quite some time, I guess, but it hasn't been to the point that it is now. What's up, Push Project? I don't know if you're the one that's watching or not, but so AI, I don't know. I have a couple of different thoughts about it. It doesn't really bother me to the level that I hear people talking about it. I mean, it was always going to go this way anyway, don't you think? There are a handful of things, directions that my mind goes with it. But before I talk about artificial intelligence, I think it's important to focus on as an artist or as anyone, whether you're an actual painter or something else, somebody, what we consider an artist, somebody else might consider, I don't know. The definition of an artist, definitively by the Oxford Dictionary, is a person's skill with a particular task or an occupation. So that could apply to a surgeon, it could apply to a home builder, it can apply to a welder, it can apply to pretty much any task that's out there. So whenever I hear the art community getting upset that they're coming for your jobs, I don't know that I look at it that way quite exactly. I mean, yes, there are going to be facets of the industry that are going to be impacted by it, because it breaks down a barrier, right? It breaks down a barrier that is there, that was only able to be accomplished by the people that spent the time learning that craft to be able to offer their services and build their life around that. And there's nothing wrong with that, okay? So I have by no means want to diminish that. This is what I do for a living, right? I make artwork, but I'm also understanding that companies want the only reason I have the job that I have is because the company that I work for does not in and of itself have the skill or the ability to make sculptures to be able to turn into the products that they need to sell, right? So if ever that changes, and it may, then I'll be looking for a job too, right? And no job is guaranteed in the first place, right? But I guess my initial question is, like, whether there was artificial intelligence or not, are you going to stop doing the thing that you enjoy to do because there is a machine that is running off of an algorithm that allows it to, like, one up you? I don't know that my question would be, why are you doing what you're doing in the first place anyway if you're going to be stumped by a machine? If you're going to let that bother you, are you going to stop? Are you going to stop drawing? And maybe you should think about that, because I've sat here and I've watched this stuff happen across the past couple years, and it didn't stop me. I graduated with my degree in media art and animation in 2013, and it took me a few years. I got some contracts pretty quickly, but they didn't last too long, and there were reasons for that. I didn't have the experience under my belt after school to be able to justify somebody offering me work for an extended amount of time, because my skills were limited, because I hadn't, even though I had just spent 3 years in school, I didn't have the on-the-job training and the experience behind me to be able to carry a lot of that forward. I had a lot of, I was willing to work, I was willing to learn, but whenever somebody's out there trying to turn around a job quickly, they can't rely on somebody that just came out of school and just really wants to work all the time. But at the same rate, don't let that discourage you. You still have to keep developing your portfolio and learning things, right? School didn't teach me how to use AutoCAD. They didn't teach me how to use Rhino. They gave me one course in anatomy, but they never talked about how to sculpt anatomy. They never taught me how to look at the human body. I've taken classes on, even after graduating, I studied, I took a medical class in, for like physical therapy, right? Where I learned anatomy and physiology and learned how the muscles and everything work together. And, but that, even that wasn't, even taking a class like that, it'll give you some understanding of some things, but I still had to spend time studying sculpture, studying sculptures, and learning how to break things down into planes and stuff like that. And I'm by no means perfect at it, but that having that knowledge influences the way that you work. Okay. And so the first thing I would tell most people, as I've drifted off a little bit into my thoughts, is that you shouldn't ever stop learning, right? Whether you've gone to art school or whether you haven't gone to art school, there are tons of resources out here on YouTube that are absolutely free, and there's no reason in the world why you shouldn't be able to pick up a skill and run with it. I've watched people over the past several years that have just, have had the will and have just gone through and done the thing, and I respect that, and it's super impressive to watch people that have gone from, no skill to speak of, and just sit down and do the thing, and watch them run laps around people who I know have been doing this for quite a bit of time, and would rather sit there and complain about the new technology coming to take your job. Because it really comes down to, what are you able to do? Say every industry is going to be impacted by artificial intelligence, and even if it wasn't, every industry has resources available to it to assist it in the processes that it needs to accomplish to finish their task. A good example is this. I was watching some builders framing up a house the other day, right? And they were using this jig that basically you just lay down on the boards, and it just lines up all the boards, so that all you got to do is drive your freaking screws or your nails in, and instead of somebody going through and running the tape measure and stuff like that. Now there's a question. It does raise a question, but in terms of, can I just give somebody this tool and a screwdriver or hammer, and can they go through and can they build a wall to code just using this tool, right? It requires no measurements or anything else like that. It just, you go through and you knock out this frame, and then you move on to the next. Builders use tools like that all the time. It doesn't mean that they're going to be able to do every single task with that, but if one thing takes, a handful of seconds off the process, if that adds that adds up over time, right? And so companies are trying to they're always interested in trying to save their bottom line, and people have to look at it appropriately. So whenever it comes to artificial intelligence, my thoughts on it are, you're not going to stop it. Nobody's going to stop it. Doesn't mean you got to lay down and roll over, but you've got to just keep going. And don't let that thing, be mad about it if you want to. I know there's probably going to be plenty of litigation about it, but I don't know. There's a handful of thoughts that come through that I think about, and what is it, what does it mean to be intelligent, and what is the difference between what we make and what a computer can make, and there are a ton of different arguments that you could have about that. But for me, I guess it really just comes down to, like, what are you doing in the first place? I mean the definition of intelligence is the ability to acquire and apply knowledge and skills. That's about it. And just because a computer can go through and formulate all this stuff, does that? I don't know. I don't know what. Maybe I should just back away from that just a little bit. I guess one of the things that comes to mind is who actually cares, right? At the end of the day, the people that complain about artificial intelligence are, a lot of them are perfectly fine with using all kinds of other tools, perfectly fine with doing kit bashing and things like that. But then whenever something else gives them a run for their money, like, I know people are just going to come out of the woodwork to attack me about this, I guess, but that's okay. The question is, who actually cares? Like, what does it actually matter? Aside from, yes, you've got to be able to pay your bills and put food on the table. I get that. Okay. But the only people who care whether or not something is made by artificial intelligence or not are the people who are being affected by it. And I'm not saying that their feelings on that are wrong by any stretch of the imagination. I get it. But if you've built your life around, I don't know, because I think about it from my perspective as an artist. Like, if I go through and I need to build something, right? If I'm building this guy here, right? This skull was from a 3D scan, right? This body was from a base mesh that I didn't make. This face, I made it. That bow, I made it myself. The war bonnet, I started building that myself with geometry inside of here. But there are elements of this thing that are things that I didn't make. But I do, this was from a scanned bison skull that I found on Sketchfab, right? And I brought it in here and I remeshed it, and I actually ended up mirroring it over, and I'm going to make some other changes to it before it's actually finalized. So basically all I did was some kit bashing, right? And people have been doing that forever. How do you think Star Wars was made? the Death Star, and half the pretty much all of the spaceships and everything. All that stuff was done by taking stuff that was already made and turning it into something else. So I don't know. I don't understand, I guess, the big ethical question. And I think it's kind of ironic in some ways, because all artists that have ever existed, anyone who has ever set out to make a thing, is only making something based upon something else that they've already seen. None of us have ever actually created anything. I don't care what you say. You've never made anything out of thin air. Nobody has ever actually created something. All we've done is taking the things that already exist, and we fashion things out of that. But most of our reference points are basically from things that are in nature and things that surround us, right? Now, you can call them unique. I will agree to that. But does the person who does the creator of all things, do they get credit for the things that people have ripped off from him? That's my question. And that's the direction that my mind goes, and people can agree with me or not. But I think that all of creation didn't make itself. So who are any of us to cite some sort of moral ground about plagiarism when the only thing we can ever do is plagiarize? That's my standpoint on a lot of it. So I guess, like, I understand the arguments, and I understand people's hang-ups on them. And it would really suck if I lost my job to a freaking computer. But at the end of the day, I'm just, like, most of the stuff that I'm doing as an artist is, trying to make something unique based upon things that already exist. So I don't know. I don't know what the answer is, or that there is an answer. And then my other question is like, what do you mean by artificial intelligence? What defines artificial intelligence? And when somebody's working as an artist, what is the difference between that person working as an artist and the guy that's building the house? A guy that's building the house, he's building stuff off of a blueprint, or at least I hope he is. But he's not the person that designed the house. And in many cases, the person who is doing the 3D modeling, they're going off of a concept a lot of the times, unless they're also concepting their own stuff, right? And so I think that people use I don't know. I think that the people use the creative terminology a bit loosely, because there's a difference between somebody who is an artist and an artisan. I think, or maybe I'm using those terms incorrectly, but if somebody comes to me and they say, "Hey, I came up with this blueprint or this thing that I made, but I need you to produce it," unless you're actually conceptualizing that entire thing out of your own mind, then you're not creating. that thing as people like to describe that they are, right? And I realize that I've got a whole other group of people over here that are just going to be like, dude, I hate you. Shut up. That's cool. I can say that too. I don't know. I think that there are a lot of discussions that people would need to have about it, or not have, or just, some people want to be, oh, well, suck it up, buttercup, and other people want to be like, hey, oh, this is the worst thing in the world. And I don't think it's either of those. I think that corporations are going to do what corporations do, and they're going to try and make a buck. And the people that have banked on being able to work in these industries as they have, are going to continue to be one-upped by technology. And then I think there's still going to be a place for people who are creative, and understand what, like I said, whenever I say creative, we're not creating anything. We are simply taking tools that have already been, that somebody else made, and using reference points that someone else made, and mixing them together and trying to come up with something from a different angle, right? We didn't make language. We didn't make mountains. We didn't make birds and bees and dogs and bears and trees and the oceans and any of that other stuff. Only one person made that. We didn't make it. And all we've been doing since creation is kid bashing off of things that he made, right? Although I do believe in God, and I do believe in the Bible, and he says to go, to subdue the earth and things like that. So we are supposed to take the things that we have available to us and make something happen out of it, right? So I don't know. I don't know if any of that stuff was even remotely coherent. Just is basically how I thought about some of this stuff, and I've listened to a handful of arguments about it. But I'll leave you with something. I think at the end of the day, what it boils down to is, what is the purpose of visual art in any capacity, if it isn't to communicate, right? The oldest communications that we know of are cave drawings and paleo art and things like that. So we as humans have been communicating visually forever, for as long as we've existed, and we should continue to do so, and that should be the purpose of the things that we make. And but what are we doing with our ability to do that? And those are the things I think about. If I'm going to make a sculpture about something, like what am I saying with it? Like this one that I'm working on here. I mean, there are a lot of different thoughts that go behind this. I'm not a First Nations person by any stretch of the imagination. I'm an Irish white dude from Central Texas, but I have always been fascinated with the Native American people and their way of life. And I don't know. There's a kind of romance, romantic sort of way of viewing things. But in my thoughts on things, um, there's a certain amount of there's a level of honor that I think of whenever it comes to these people, and or at least what's been described to me in things, and so I try to capture that in some of the work that I do. I don't know why I've drifted towards this kind of stuff. I like cowboy art and Old West sort of stuff, and then I'm also fascinated with things like this and biblical stories and all that stuff. But I'm kind of rambling a little bit. But my point is that when you make a thing, what is the purpose behind it? Is it just simply to, like, what is its purpose? And its purpose could simply be just to make somebody smile, right? Or maybe you're just expressing a mood, right? Whatever that is, when we communicate visually, the communication is the most important thing, not the money that we can make from it. And if the reason that you're in it is to make some money, well, you can make money elsewhere, right? You can make money working at a hardware store and still make your art. Don't let it be the thing that owns you, is basically what I'm trying to say. Because I think there is a difference between communicating visually and just making a pretty picture. Okay? And I think that people get into art with the intention to be able to share of themselves, but we also have lives to live and bills to pay and things like that, right? And that's very real, and people need to, people have to eat. It's not an option. You don't eat, you die, right? So therein lies the problem, right? So I think that we should ideally focus on the good that we can do, or what can we bring to the world with the gifts that we have, versus worrying about the job that a computer is going to take away from us, right? Because at the end of the day, none of that stuff's going to go with us. We're all going to die one day. So it ain't like any of the artwork that you've ever done. Like, look at all the sculptures that have been buried under rubble or are under the ocean, it all goes away at some point. So while you're here, while you're able to make a thing, regardless of whether there's an artificial intelligence or not, say what you need to say and do it while you still have time to, right? And I guess that's where I think about things, right? And I hope that makes sense to somebody. And so I guess I'm gonna have to wrap this up here in a bit, but I wanted to kind of talk about to continue with that theme, where I'm going to be going with this channel, and what I want to do in the future is I'm going to continue to make pieces like this, and I'm going to continue to show processes like 3D printing and how to use different kinds of tools to be able to take something out of the computer and turn it into something physical, right? And there are lots of different ways, and there are techniques in mold making, there are techniques in casting, and we'll get to that stuff eventually. But I guess where I'm looking at things for myself is, what is the why? Okay, I think that's more important than anything else. And I think that this channel's still monetized, but I could care less whether or not it makes a dime, right? It's one of the things that I'm focused on these days is, sharing your talents and your abilities with the world and trying to make a difference in the world that's around us. I mean, look, it's, November 4th, 2023. There's fighting breaking out all over the world and all kinds of craziness, and there's a lot of hurt going on in the world, and we need to take the gifts that we've been blessed with and do the best that we possibly can with them. So whenever I hear people complaining about artificial intelligence, it's like, look, dude, there's kids over across the world that are just hoping that they're going to make it to the next day. So you take the complaints about artificial intelligence and, park them somewhere else, right? So I want to leave off with this, and if I lose subscribers on this, whatever. I'm able to do what I'm able to do because God has blessed me to be able to do it, and I owe it to Him to honor Him with my talents, with the talents that He's given to me, right? And so one of the things that I want to talk about is talents. And so if you're not a Bible believer, that's okay. But listen, Jesus, whenever He walked this earth, He talked about talents, the parable of the talents, right? Now, some people say this is about money. Other people say it's about your skills and your talents. I'm not certain on either direction, but I do find it interesting. He's talking about the kingdom of heaven and what it's like, and this is part of the book of Matthew in the Gospels, Matthew 25, where he's going through what they call the Olivet Discourse. I believe it's the Olivet Discourse. In Matthew 25:14, he talks about the kingdom of heaven, and he says for it will be like a man going on a journey, who called his servants and entrusted to them his property. To one he gave 5 talents, to another 2, to another 1, to each according to his ability. Then he went away. The one that had received the 5 talents went at once and traded with them, and he made 5 more talents. So also the one that had 2 talents made 2 talents more. But the one that had received 1 talent went and dug in the ground and hid his master's money. Now after a long time, the master of those servants came and settled accounts with them. And the one that received the 5 talents came forward, bringing 5 more talents, saying, Master, you delivered to me 5 talents. Here, I have made 5 more talents. And his master said to him, Well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful over a little, and I will set you over much. And then he says, enter into the joy of your master. Okay. And he also went to the person that had 2 talents, and he showed him that, hey, I took 2 talents and I made 2 more. And then he also said to the same guy, to the different guy, he says, hey, well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful over a little, I will set you over much. Enter into the joy of your master. All right. And so then he goes to the next guy, the last guy, and he says, the guy that had the 1 talent, he says, Master, I knew you were a hard man, reaping where you did not sow, and gathering where you scattered no seed. So I was afraid, and I went and hid your talent in the ground here. Here you have what is yours. So he gives him the money back. But his master answered him, You wicked and slothful servant, you knew that I reap where I have not sown, and gather where I have not scattered seed. Then you ought to have invested my money with the bankers, and at my coming I should have at least received what was my own with interest. So take the talent from him and give it to the one that has the 10 talents. For to everyone who has will more be given, and he will have an abundance. But from the one who has not, even what he has will be taken away. And cast the worthless servant into the outer darkness. In that place there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Now, I've heard a lot of different people talk about this story, and whether or not it involves money or the skills that people have. And one of the things I think about is, we are all endowed with certain abilities, right? And we should take those things and we should try to do good with them and try to impact people's lives. And that's the purpose of art, to me. And, somebody who is a banker or a builder has skills in being able to make things and to help people out, right? And so we should use those talents and those skills to assist the world around us. And then if we do those things, then we ourselves will be taken care of, right? It's not about us. It's about the rest of the world. And that's really where I guess my focus is with art in general. So it's kind of one of the reasons why I look at this whole artificial intelligence thing and think, it's not the thing that you should be afraid of. I mean, whether or not there was artificial intelligence or not, you shouldn't stop doing what you do, right? Like, don't let that be the thing that scares you. What was your reason for making art in the first place? If it was just to make some money, then you can go find some other place to make money. So now that I only have 2 subscribers left, I hope you all have a great rest of your weekend. And I haven't checked any of the chat, whether or not anybody's even saying anything, and that's okay. But y'all take care now, all right? We'll actually get to some sculpting the next time. Wasn't able to do a whole lot. Now I got to go do laundry. All right, y'all. Thanks for hanging out, and I look forward to the next time. Take care, y'all.